Konnichiwa, my friends. Welcome back to the Deep Dive podcast, where your host, yes, me, the lonely creature speaking into microphone like someone who has not touched grass in 3 days, guides you through world affairs with the grace of a slightly sleepy tanuki. Today, Yadada-san, we are diving into geopolitics again, because nothing says relaxing afternoon like the vague possibility of regional conflict, ne? So buckle up, or better, lie down. Horizontal listening, very fashionable. So our story really kicks off with this massive split, a great divergence that's happening in the world right now. Some nations are basically breaking free from their old political habits, while others, well, they're not just stuck, they're actively regressing. And this is the heart of it, right? On one side, you've got these nations challenging decades of political stagnation. Think of them as breaking free. But then you have these other major powers marching right back into what you could call a historical cage, reviving these old, top-down authoritarian models. It's like two completely different futures are being written at the exact same time. Just look at Italy and Japan. For years, their politics felt, well, stuck. Then all of a sudden, Italy elects Giorgia Meloni, their first female prime minister, and in Japan, you're seeing the rise of leaders like Sanae Takaichi, who could become their first. And why? Because the public was just completely fed up with the stagnant old guard. Both of them rose from outside the usual political dynasties, challenging that old boys club from the inside. Now, the key trait these new leaders share is this clear-eyed pragmatism. The source material calls them sober and decisive. This isn't really about left or right ideology. It's about seeing the world for what it actually is, especially in foreign policy, and being willing to act on that reality without any illusions about authoritarian regimes. Okay, so to really understand the world they're facing, we have to contrast this new wave with what's happening just across the sea. We have to go inside that historical cage. So, what is this historical cage? Well, the source defines it as a deliberate state project to, and I'm quoting here, domesticate its own population. It's a method of control that works by trapping the entire national consciousness inside a very specific state-approved version of history, effectively cutting it off from the outside world. And it's a pretty straightforward 3-step formula. First, you cultivate this immense vanity about a glorious ancient past. Second, you cultivate a deep, deep sense of grievance and victimhood from modern history, the whole century of humiliation. And finally, you channel all that manufactured pride and resentment outwards, directing it as pure hatred toward a designated external enemy. This way, the ruling party is always seen as the nation's only protector. Now, this system of historical manipulation, it inevitably breeds a very specific political culture, which one Peking University professor calls unicization. It's a culture where truth doesn't matter. The only goal is pleasing the emperor, the ultimate power. Sycophancy completely replaces substance. And as the professor warns, this systemic illness ends up poisoning the entire country, stifling any real progress. Hi, Chotto Mateo, quick break. If you are enjoying this episode, even just a little bit, like half smile while scrolling your phone level, please consider subscribing to the podcast. It helps the show grow, and it tells the algorithm, hey, this host is not talking into a microphone for nothing, nah? And if you leave a review, all sugoi bonus points. 5 stars preferred, 4 stars acceptable. 3 stars means you listened while half asleep, maybe? 2 stars means you are my ex. 1 star? Must be Beijing. So hit that subscribe button like you're swiping right on someone who actually reads books, and leave a review before you forget, nah? Okay, promo over, back to the chaos. So what happens when this internal system, one built on manipulated history and a culture of unicization, has to interact with the outside world? Well, you get what can only be described as diplomacy by tantrum. The source describes it as this bizarre two-faced performance. On one hand, you have the village bully making threats, staging massive military drills, puffing out its chest, and then in the very next moment, it can transform into the shrew, crying about how its feelings have been hurt, claiming victim status, and having a complete emotional meltdown. The international community, of course, has a name for this: wolf warrior diplomacy. But the crucial thing to understand is that this performance isn't really for a foreign audience. No, it's a direct product of that unicized system. The diplomats are performing for the emperor back home, engaging in the kind of aggressive, hyper-emotional displays they believe the leader wants to see. It's a performance of absolute loyalty. This erratic behavior has forced its neighbors to stop engaging with the performance and instead, well, they have to respond to the cold, unavoidable reality on the ground.
So Japan is like, hey everyone, let's modernize, reform, innovate, maybe even elect strong female leaders who actually read their briefing papers. Taiwan is like, we're just over here doing democracy, eating night market food, inventing semiconductors, and trying not to annoy the dragon next door. And China is like, nobody move, nobody breathe, and absolutely nobody disagree. So when leaders from Shinzo Abe to Sanaya Takayuki state that a Taiwan contingency is a Japan contingency, it's not meant as a threat. It is a calm, sober statement of geopolitical fact.
And this isn't just some abstract government policy. It reflects a massive shift in public opinion. Just look at this. In 2002, a majority of Japanese people, 55%, had a positive view of China. Fast forward to today, and that number has absolutely collapsed to just over 7%. Meanwhile, the number of people with a negative view has skyrocketed to nearly 90%. This doesn't happen randomly. It's a direct response to Beijing's behavior over the last 2 decades.
All of this has created a stark geopolitical divide, what the source calls a civilizational fault line running right through East Asia. On one side, you have modern, open democracies like Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan, societies that are embracing reform and civil liberties. On the other, you have nations still trapped in their historical cages, China, North Korea, Russia, all stuck in that same emperor-eunuch model of rule.
All right, Minasan, that's all for today's Geopolitical Ramen Bowl. If you enjoyed this episode, please give a polite bow to our legendary producer, FireflyHaku. Without him, this show would sound like a middle-aged man screaming into a karaoke mic about the Taiwan Strait. Wait, maybe that actually is our aesthetic. Sore wa ine. Thank you for tuning in, my nerdy comrades. I appreciate you more than Italy appreciates espresso and Japan appreciates onsen. Until next time, stay informed, stay curious, and stay slightly sarcastic. Matane!